So for me, I feel like I'm always a dancer first. I think I'm a dancer before I'm anything else. And that influences oftentimes how I interact, not just with people, but with information, right? How I feel, right? How I articulate and express that feeling in spaces. I think it'd be really difficult to separate my identity and just how I show up in the world from dance.
Welcome to Tribe Talk, where we alternate between current and next-gen changemakers to demonstrate that age doesn't impact the quality of one's work. I'm here today with Kahina Haynes, the Executive Director of the Dance Institute of Washington. Kahina, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. The pleasure is mine. I am so thrilled and inspired by what Tribe is doing. And, you know, if any of my experience or, you know, the journey can help facilitate, it would be an honor. So truly a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, if that's not an understatement, I don't know what is. Before we get started, Tribe Talk is sponsored by Raise, a mobile-first platform powering individual activism, corporate giving, and nonprofit volunteerism. So download Raise on Google Play or the App Store to give, volunteer, and connect.
Tribe Talk is a streamer studio production. Stream your podcast, stream your story, stream yourself. Try it free at streamr.nyc. Make your voice, brand, and message seen and heard on every platform today.
Kahina, you have an incredible story, and it's no surprise that with the term Dance Institute of Washington, your work is around dance. But tell me about your background in dance yourself.
Wow, thank you for that question. I've been dancing since before I can remember. In fact, my mother is a dancer and my grandmother is a dance educator. So I'm a third generation dance artist in my blood, but I started dancing around the age of 2. Under the tutelage of my grandmother. And I should say that, you know, wasn't just dance lessons. I happen to also be first generation American. My family's from Guyana in South America, so dance plays a huge cultural role in terms of passing down information, in terms of that connection to identity. So it was really special, and I think I learned early on that dance was about more than steps. And we'll get to maybe some of that later, but it certainly was an undercurrent in the rest of my journey. But yeah, since the age of 2, so a long time. I won't date myself, but a long time. Yeah.
The closest I'm getting, I'm doing tango classes now.
Okay.
I love it.
All right, Argentinian, we like it. Oh, tango, that's a great one.
But I want to ask, just in simplest terms too, how do you define dance?
Ooh, I love that. Let's get into it, because I think there are different ways to define it, and we certainly don't have a claim on it. I feel like dance is of and for and by the people. So that might change. I think that there's fluidity to that. My personal definition is, I like to think of dance as a formula, having something to say or express, meeting rhythm, meeting movement, right? So that plus that plus that. Now that having something to say or express could not be defined in words. It could be something I can't even articulate right here and right now. That's part A. Part 2 is rhythm. Now that doesn't have to be music, right? People say, I can't dance. I'm like, well, your heart is dancing. So you're dancing because it's beating and expressing and helping you live to a rhythm, right? So rhythm, having a pulse to it, whatever that may be. And then movement. Something's gotta be moving, right? Whether it's your body, your hair, like something. So to me, that's what dance encompasses, all of those things. And I think I like to have a more generalist view. I think there are lots of things that are considered dance that we don't typically think of as dance in its traditional terms.
Would you mind also telling me just a quick overview?
Yeah.
Like a 1 minute, what is DIW? What is your mission? And what is it that you do?
It's a great question. So Holistically, DIW is set on revolutionizing and disrupting pre-professional training. And the reason for that, or why, is that we recognize pre-professional training in dance to be this transformative medium, right? It equips young people with so many transferable skills, too many to list right now, but so many. We know this from longitudinal studies, National Endowment of the Arts have done, et cetera. So we know this. However, for something to be so powerful and so transformative, would you believe it has been, for most of the decades that it has existed in this country, completely inaccessible to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people. So you have something that really changes the game, but people can't access it. And we think that that is not just a matter of barriers at DIW. We also think it's inherent in the systems that uphold kind of the industry at large. So we look at addressing that across 3 pillars. Direct services, we do training and education. We're building up a pipeline of diverse, amazing young dancers who can matriculate into the industry and have it look like the beautiful fabric of the country. 2, we focus on what we call advanced work, which is sharing our best practices so that not just DIW, but other like-minded institutions can achieve the same thing. We share our model, our theory of change, our implementation, methodology, so that we can really multiply. And 3rd, through our creative placemaking initiative, we focus on the ecosystem. So not just the dancers themselves, but what are the other elements of the system that make or break this mission that we're trying to solve. So for example, venues, or buildings where dance needs to happen, or curated works, like if we produce a bunch of artists, where are they going to create? And where are their creations going to get produced? So we call that creative placemaking work. We're in a few coalitions in the city that are collectively working on making more accessible theaters in DC and creating incubators for local artists who have this incredible training but nowhere to take it. So it's a 3 kind of pillars, or broad pillars for DIW, but all of it together we're hoping transforms the industry and makes it more equitable, representative, more inclusive, and better because of all of those things.
Incredible.
Thank you.
I remember I grew up doing a lot of self-defense.
Okay.
And so there was always that understanding that when we were doing a form, it is a form of dance, right? It's a way of expression, although it's about protection and respect and dignity.
It's dance underneath.
Right.
Dance is the framework. I completely, that resonates with me. Like when we at Dance Institute, you mentioned it's about dance, and we say every day is like dance day, all things dance, and people wonder like, how does that translate? What do you mean all things dance? And our view, our philosophy is like it quite literally permeates our day-to-day life. You don't realize it, but I think of things like, even, a big theme for us in the last 10 years has been like weaving dance or acknowledging dance's role in things like social justice, even advocacy and things like that. And people said, dance is not related to that. And I said, well, what happens at protests? What do you think people are doing? When they're stepping, they're marching, and there's rhythm, and there's sound, and they're expressing and advocating. Of course that's dance. That's all the elements of the formula. So I like that story, that statement you just made about connecting it to martial arts. I think that can be applied to so many different activities and sectors. Like, dance isn't, again, this fixed, like, there isn't just a technical proficient, definition. It's this framework almost of how we combine those things. So I like that. I might have to steal that and bring it to Dance Institute. But yeah, that's how we think about dance very similarly, all that to say.
And what about internally? Like, how do you embody your identity as a dancer?
Oh my goodness. Dancers, we're different. Let me just say that. But truly, I think in all that it encompasses, it goes without saying, you process the world very differently. That lens and that way of just showing up into the world, it looks different sometimes. So for me, I feel like I'm always a dancer first. I think I'm a dancer before I'm anything else. And that influences oftentimes how I interact, not just with people, but with information, right? How I feel, right? How I articulate and express that feeling in spaces. I think it'd be really difficult to separate my identity and just how I show up in the world from dance. Like, I can't even imagine. It's a way of life, and that's an expression. That's something I learned, I think, in like early adulthood, because I thought that's how everyone experienced dance. And that wasn't the case. Everyone has their own, relationship to the world and how they process it, and that's a beautiful thing. But I found my people, in college and thereafter, and I was like, oh, you moving through the world like me. Like, when I hear music, I can't sit still. Even now. Look at this conversation. I'm so animated, I'm moving, the currency is flowing through me. I can't sit still. That's just me. That's what I mean. That dancer identity, it shows up first, and then the rest of me comes with it.
Amazing. And kind of the perfect segue to asking, well, if you embody the identity of a dancer, then how do you feel being a facilitator of dance now at the Dance Institute?
That is an excellent question, and something that I don't think is unique to a dancer or dance artist journey moving into facilitation or like administrative. I think anytime you are a practitioner of something, you've studied it, you've developed a fluency and a love for it and a passion, that's consistent and informed by the ongoing practice of it, right? The doing of it, the implementation. So I will be honest, it was very difficult to envision what my relationship to this medium would be if I could not be doing the dancing. I thought I was gonna dance. From 3 years old to as much as I did it, and half day school and all of that, I thought I was gonna be dancing professionally. That was the plan. I had no plans to go to college whatsoever. So all that, when that didn't happen, and before even running the nonprofit, I had to understand and figure out this relationship to dance. And I credit some of those early experiences to how, when I got to the nonprofit, that is the Dance Institute of Washington, how I was able to navigate finding and maintaining my connection to the movement itself, to the medium, how I was bringing that into the role of a facilitator, and how in my doing that, I'm actually not as distant from the medium as I might think or feel, that I'm even closer in proximity, because I am exponentially augmenting, right? Like how many other people get to have that experience. Right. And that was my moment of okay, you know what? I'm not on the stage, but how many dancers now get to be on the stage? Because I've taken a moment to think about other ways for me to use these other skills to facilitate. I love that word. So I think that it's hard. I think you have to be open to it evolving. Again, I do not go on stage. People ask all the time, do I still dance? And I'm like, yeah, in my bedroom. I'm not getting up on stage. But I don't feel distant to the medium. I feel like I've found ways as an executive director. I think you have some liberties and some agencies to tailor how you facilitate and administer the work, and you can be intentional about how you insert, I guess for lack of a better word, your proximity and experience, your engagement with said medium. So if it's a cooking nonprofit and I were a chef, it'd be the same thing.
Right.
It's a sports nonprofit and I were a soccer player, it'd be the same thing. There is no EDs do this. That's not a thing. It's not that prescriptive, believe it or not, because I'm an ED and I still teach.
Yeah.
Because I told the board that's important to me, and I need to be that much in touch. Now, I still have to run the organization, right? So I have to be thoughtful about my allocation of time and resources. But I say that to say you can really envision, I think we can create experiences as facilitators that allow us to still engage and interface with the medium, albeit not in the traditional practitioner way.
Right. And I almost wonder if when someone is young and they're dancing in a group, you kind of feel the energy of others around you. And you've alluded to this in other examples. So even now, do you feel the energy of those that you're facilitating?
I do.
Awesome.
I do. When both in terms of the populations that we serve, our community, Dance Institute of Washington. So we specialize, concert training in dance has historically been really exclusive and inaccessible to BIPOC populations, as well as some other populations, but we focus on BIPOC populations because in addition to it being inaccessible, they've also been intentionally marginalized and kept out. So that's the community that we primarily serve at Dance Institute, and seeing their experience from the training opportunities that we provide to the performance engagements to the productions, all of these dance-related and dance-adjacent experiences, I feel like I'm on stage. Like, I really, really do. I am so happy, and I feel so like super privileged to have like the job I have. I feel like it's the best job in the world because I do feel that energy still, even though I'm not on stage with them. And even when if you take the direct services out completely, and we just look at the skeleton of, the resource and operations side of the nonprofit, which is where most EDs spend a bulk of their time, I think this part depends on how you craft and structure your team in that community, but I feel energized there as well. That is something we're very, very intentional on. It doesn't matter if you're in the finance department, ops team, marketing, like you need to have a passion for dance.
Right.
That's like a requirement. And so in curating and cultivating this type of culture, I still feel that energy palpably, like no matter, even the snooze meetings, as I like to call them, it's like I still feel energized because the undercurrent of what we're doing and whom we're doing it for and why we're doing it is connected to dance. And it's driven by that that medium that we all hold so near and dear. So yeah, I'm in budget meetings, but I still feel like I'm talking about dance, and I still feel like the conversation, at the end of the day, I'm able to connect it to, this is gonna be that many more point shoes for our dancers. So you know what I mean? You still get that energy.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you've alluded now to the fact, as you're an executive director, it's very important that those that work with you have an alignment of passion and purpose.
100%. So something that I was advised against when I was catapulted into this opportunity, great opportunity, but catapulted unexpectedly, was I was actually advised against that, and I'm really happy to kind of be, talking about why I stuck to my gut and went there, because it has served our organization, and I have colleagues who can speak to a similar choice and pattern and they say it's also served them. But I was advised, like, oh, but you're a dance organization, like you can't have all dancers. And it was like, and there's this kind of honestly baseless narrative that you're fed that like you need to go for skills over alignment, expertise over alignment. And again, maybe from like the way back when that was a thing, like the launch of like the first ever nonprofits, like I see the theory in that, but in reality, those skills sans alignment cause chaos and confusion. And I think when we're thinking specifically about founders, right, we gotta think of that profile and what values they have and what their priorities are for this, amazing thing that they've created. They've literally put it out there. The reality is there are lots of different people that can bring skills. There are people that can train in providing certain skills for your nonprofit, but I think what's more meaningful and what gives founders security to transition, their entities is that sense of, so beyond the skill, you understand what we're doing and why it matters. Because at the end of the day, it's not enough to just maintain the organism that's keeping the mission and dream alive. That's what the organization is at the end of the day. It's an organism. You have to keep it, fed and resourced and all of that. But if that takes away ultimately from the mission and what you really set out to do in the first place, I don't think that gives founders the security to ever really hand it over. Right. And I think we should be more thoughtful in how we counsel and advise on that. And I love that you said alignment with purpose, mission, and how important that is, and to not underestimate that or not compromise that for just like, you know, rampant skill. Like, yes, you do need skills, and it's helpful, and experience and expertise in your organization, but you absolutely need people that get it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think would have grown to having, over 60 volunteers.
Come on.
If they weren't giving their extra time, and especially for nonprofits, when I prefer more foundations. When foundations are looking for people to give time, you need to demonstrate why there's value in that
That's
to them.
right.
And if they're not valuing their time as worthwhile,
that's right.
Because of course it doesn't give a paycheck to volunteer, then there needs to be other ways. And if you're going to eventually get someone full-time or part-time, then you want the volunteers to relate with them too.
That's right.
So that's where I'm like, yes,
100%.
this is the new identity. Now, you mentioned something else that I really wanted to get through in this talk, which is the catapulting into this role.
Yes.
I want to frame this in the lens that a lot of founders in college worry about transitions. If I can't continue my work, if I can't go forward, what is going to happen to the years of experience beforehand? So could you explain your catapulting with that frame in mind?
Sure. So it's a little unconventional. I use the word catapulted because I got to the organization, to Dance Institute of Washington, at a time when the founder, Fabian Barnes, was still alive. So he actually hired me. He had founded the organization in 1987, and then it was incorporated in 1993. So, and I got engaged with the organization around 2015. So at this point, he was like a founder, you know? He was in it and had been wrestling with that exact issue. He did not plan on being a founder for that long, but decades went by and there was just this, you know, persistent concern about the organization's ability to continue in his absence, right? Or with him moving on. So I know that context and that setup really well. Now, of course, different demographic. This was a much older individual, but I don't think it's, you know, it's the same. It's the same things. And if anything, our younger founders, it's probably to far higher degrees, right, and magnitude, because they are really in the thick of it and have this precious thing that hasn't been around maybe for that long. So I want to honor that. Like, their feelings and their angst about it, probably just as palpable as maybe he was feeling, even though it was decades later. That being said, I came into the organization to work directly under him as an evaluator. That was my background. And he wanted to understand what about his programming was actually working. He was trying to solve this problem, not just deliver services. Great, came on board to do that. And unfortunately, within 8 months of my time with the organization, he suddenly did pass away. Totally unexpected. And again, if you can imagine, he already had flagged all of the deficits that were preventing him from moving on. Whatever little there was that he was offering to the organization was now completely gone. So in a way, his biggest fear kind of did manifest. And that is the experience that I was kind of thrown into, because when that happened, the board of directors reached out to a few of the staff members who they knew had been working in close proximity with the founder. And they asked us to give recommendations or thoughts or just feedback on how we think they should proceed. And so I responded to that prompt and I gave just my ideas based on the conversations that I'd had with the late founder. And they pretty much said, "This sounds great, can you do it?" And I was like, I didn't plan on that. These were just recommendations. But I acquiesced, I took the opportunity. I was very young at the time, so I was like, this could be a great, you know, career opportunity. So anyway, all that to say, I was catapulted and I experienced firsthand, although the founder was not around to confirm any of this, I feel like I got a sense of why he had been so concerned. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But that gave me great insight into what founders might want to think about before it gets to that point. So I felt like this is actually, I have this kind of once in a lifetime opportunity, this horrific incident that has happened, but the learnings from it, or the silver lining, is that we now can be fluent in knowing what the things are, like what is most important to think about to facilitate leadership transitions and succession. So I identified those, and we spent about 4 years working through these kind of pillars of preparing for a transition. We knew what those were because all we had to do was say, well, what were the hardest parts of us inheriting this? What did we not know? And if we had known it, it would have made a big difference. Identifying those items, we had a real-time simulation that helped us do that.
Well, walk me through those.
We'll start with the pillars. First, it's documenting. There's so much assumption that goes into a procedure being clear, right? Something that happens in a particular way. There could be things that you do every single day that you think are just it's commonsensical. Someone replaces me and they would know to do the same thing. They would not. So one of the first things I started doing was having everyone in real time, as they were learning the job on the job, document. I'm like, oh, this is a meeting, and we're talking about how this happened or how we solved this problem, video record. Simple, video record, someone with the phone. We just started cataloging, that's not the right word, documenting all of what we were doing and how we were doing it. So at least we'd have the information, and we could decide how we would organize it, how we would share it, how we would train. But the biggest part was getting it out, extracting it from the minds of the people that were doing it in real time. Because that's what we didn't have. All of those things lived in the founder's head. And it wasn't, again, this is why I'm over manuals. You could chat GPT a manual, finance manual for a nonprofit. It's not those things. It's in the subconscious way that you operate every single day, right? So for example, I'm sure there's a manual for regular, the manual that tells you what to do if all the criteria and all the assumptions are met. But what happens when those assumptions aren't met? What happens in those moments of triage? What happens when there wasn't enough money in the operating to make payroll? He did something on occasion when he experienced that allowed him to keep the organization afloat. We needed to know what that was, right? So when I encountered that problem, which I absolutely did in my first year, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know how to solve that, but I knew one thing: whatever I figured out, I was going to record it, so that whoever I needed to hand this process off to could very easily replicate it in my absence. So documenting. And let me just say this. Everyone has their own preference for how they approach this would be a monumental project for an organization that's already in operation. It could be very daunting, where do I even begin? My recommendation, I don't think anyone needs to think about this in a very formal kind of project management way. I think you just have to you build it into practice. It becomes something that you do almost like second nature, right? You're in a conversation, the org gets restructured, you hire a new staff member, so that changes the scope of that staff member. So now how are we doing this? We're having a conversation about that. There's probably a meeting or a briefing or something. Someone's got to record it. And now you can feed those recordings to an AI model, and it can spit out, the wiki page or the procedure or the manual. So documenting as much as possible would be my first major thing. And I would say, if you are a little intimidated, where to start and what to document first, I would go with your programmatic, whatever your core activities are and how they happen, that model. Whatever phase you are in as an organization, that's where I would start. Some organizations have their theory of changes, their logic models, and they're we have our model, it's prescribed. It's but it still is not capturing how people are doing what they're doing. And if that entire staff left tomorrow and you brought all new people on, even with all the training and all of that, the founders want that pulse. They want that feeling. They want that authentic delivery on their dream and their vision the way they would do it. That is not just going to be the cold cut, procedural steps. It's in those subconscious moments. It's in those gaps. That's where I think founders should really think about capturing what they're thinking, what they're doing, and then put that into recordings and get that generated. It's almost like preparing and cultivating someone or developing someone to think how you think about the organization. And we try to do that in real time. Like when we bring on a person, that's too late. I think founders are already anxious by that point. But if before they're even ready to hire the next person, if they've spent the last year or two, doing this, and they can hand that over, and it's not just this is what I did, but the reason I did this is because I thought of it in this way. My goals and priorities were this. These were the landmines I knew not to step on. Those are the things that make you feel like, okay, I can hand this over. The relevant stuff. Not just the stuff that you can Google. The relevant stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you're prescribing, just like how Simon Sinek's Start With Why talks about founders, doing the same Start With Why for documenting, recording, and preparing the future.
Yes.
I mean, for Tribe, the core is that when we turn 30, we step away. It always has to be next generation for next generation. So we have in mind the understanding that no matter what, we will transition.
Yeah.
We can't stay here for decades. We will phase out. So for us to know how to document and prepare, that's really important.
Yes. Good. I agree. 100%. I'm still, by the way, integrating and weaving this in. We are by no means experts in this. There are a lot of things, our financial things that I kind of alluded to, our development and fundraising. That was a big one. Very much founder-based usually. So how does that work without the external, figurehead of the organization? But believe it or not, there are ways, right? I had to do a couple of retreats to get the ball rolling, but we were able to unpack kind of what are aspects to the formula that is when Kahina goes into a pitch,
right,
or when Kahina goes into a foundation meeting. Now, will the next ED do it exactly like me? No, but what I can offer in making sure I identify the why, right, and the way I was thinking about it, they'll be more equipped than just if I only provided them the steps. I set up the meeting. I went in the meeting. I pitched DIW. That's not helpful, honestly. The next leader is gonna kind of know that, We gotta think about what are they not gonna know? What are those special secret things that you don't realize are buried in the subconscious but are so impactful?
Right.
Yeah. Those are the things.
And I feel like, so if core pillar one is documentation, right, with respects to time, we can't reach them all. What is the last pillar you discovered?
Simulation. Real time. Throwing the people in while you're still here to do it. Shadow day, ED for a day, right? We haven't started this yet, but we are at the point now. In fact, I was talking to a colleague of mine, also a nonprofit, a founder, in fact. I'm not a founder, but he's a founder. And we're gonna do an executive swap, right? Where we'll not only swap roles, but we're also gonna identify whoever our chief of staff, deputy, whoever would be second in line, and they have to be ED. They have to do the job for a week, whatever. You simulate the experience. There is nothing like being able to do that with the founder still around. Not to be overly prescriptive, right? Or to tweak and kind of edit, but just to be able to provide feedback in real time, because it's learning. Let's be honest, you could run a million nonprofits, each one is different, and what you're gonna need to be successful changes every time. So there's nothing if that's step one, by the end and before you wrap up, the opportunity for whoever is being considered at any point, years down the line, bringing them into the fold, it's never too early. And giving them the opportunity with the safety net of you still being there, right, which is great, to try it out. And we do this in a lot of ways at Dance Institute of Washington. We have an apprentice program, we have a teacher training, every core role to our mission, including my own, has a pipeline built in to the staffing structure. So everyone has a role that they understand has like a present priority and focus, but within that role is likely like a fill-in position that they are it's not as explicit as like upward mobility necessarily, but they know like if that person leaves tomorrow, you're stepping into that role. From middle management all the way up to the C-suite, all the way up to executive, everyone has that. And it makes me feel really confident about the continuation of the organization in my absence.
Right. And I think that giving responsibility to others is such a good sign of a great leader. It's you embodying that bottom-up hierarchy of saying that you serve your organization and you need to give them the opportunity to serve themselves and others.
Yes.
And so when you tell someone, do this task and I'm gonna go look over your shoulder the whole way, you can only do that at best with 4 people.
Exactly.
And those 4 people are not gonna like it. But if you ask, like Steve Jobs says, you don't hire people to do good work to tell them how to do good work. You hire people to tell you how to do good work. You bring people on to be inspirations, not rote machines.
That's right.
We have machines for that.
That's right.
So really exciting to know that for someone who hit such a big gap, the ultimate fear that no matter what you do in preparation, you can't prepare for it, you're just gone.
Yeah.
And you got to fingers crossed to know that someone has been able to take strides to prepare and move things forward. I really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing all of that on our episode of Tribe Talk. Thank you for your time and presence and for letting us glimpse into what it's like to jump into the role of leadership and embody the facilitator instead of just the auctioneer actioner.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be afraid. That's all I would tell people. Don't be afraid. Let other people take the reins, see what happens. Change is good, you know? So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I hope it was helpful.
Absolutely.
Tribe Talk is a Streamer Studio production. Try Streamer free at streamr.nyc. Executive producer David Walters, videography and editing by David Walters, graphic design by Tristan Bresnan, music by Benjamin Senmana, hosted by Kyle Mathis. Tribe, taking root today to advance tomorrow.